This is actually a video request, and it's regarding an artist named Betty Who. And I was asked to do a lesbian reaction video on her interview from Made It Out Media. She's explaining how she is, quote, queer, and then sometimes she says she's, quote, bisexual. And if you know me and my content, whether you know me in real life or if you just know me from listening to my content on YouTube, I personally do not refer to myself as queer. I never have, and I never want to. I do not relate to the word queer. I do not identify as queer, and I personally do not like the word queer. I noticed that she used the word queer quite a bit, and I was wanting to know why she refers to herself as queer. Now, of course, I understand that queer is used in modern day society. It is a very new way that people who are within the LGBTQIA plus community refer to themselves as being. They collectively use the word queer as representing all sexual orientations or gender identities. That's what they usually mean by the word queer. However, I have also learned myself just from coaching people, because I'm a certified life coach, there are women who refer to themselves as queer because they do not identify as lesbian, which would be a female homosexual. And they say that they're queer because they identify in more than one way. And usually it's a blend of their sexual orientation as well as their gender identity, meaning usually they consider themselves as being bisexual, or some of them consider themselves as being queer because they are pansexual or fluid in their sexuality. But they also experience being gender fluid or non-binary. And so that's why they prefer to use the umbrella term queer, because it is actually a way for them to express themselves in more ways than one. And actually the artist Betty Who, she confirmed that in the interview, because she views queerness as a lifestyle, and she doesn't view it as just one way of identifying herself, because she actually identifies as being bisexual and non-binary. So that's what I learned about her. But the reason why I don't identify as queer is because I identify as lesbian. But also, the word queer never derived from homosexual people. The word queer was never an original word that came from people who are non-heterosexual. The word queer actually derived from heterosexual people who are bigoted and homophobic. They use the word queer as a slur, and they still do. But the word queer was added to the LGBT acronym, which is the Q, which represents queer. It was added very recently. It was in 2016 when the organization GLAAD, GLAAD, added the queer word to the acronym LGBT, because it was LGBT for years, as far as the early 80s, from my understanding, when they decided to create the acronym. But the Q in the LGBT was added recently in 2016, so that's less than 10 years ago. And I always hear that they say that they're queer because they don't identify solely as homosexual. So a homosexual could be a female homosexual or a male homosexual. But there are some people who use the word queer and they say that they are a gay male. I mainly heard gay males use the word queer. I don't really hear gay females, which are lesbians, use the word queer to identify themselves. I've only heard gay males use it. And when gay males use it, what I've learned from them is they use it because they want to use the slur queer as a word of empowerment. So in other words, they're using what the heterosexual community intended to harm or attack gay people. They're using the word to empower themselves as gay males. And so although I understand why they use the word queer, I still do not use the word queer to identify myself because it never derived from the homosexual community. I'm going to give my lesbian reaction about this interview, and I've actually listened to it because I had to find in the interview where I was asked to do my lesbian reaction about how I feel about Betty Who's statements regarding lesbians and lesbians dating men or lesbians deciding that they're bisexual. You can be at any point in your life learning yourself and getting familiar with who you are. And because we live in a heteronormative society, it can make it a bit challenging and a bit conflicting for you to be able to know who you are. Because there's so many voices, there's so much distractions, and there's so much discouragement that people will decide or think they can decide what their sexual orientation is. But I don't believe you can decide your sexual orientation. I don't believe you can choose your sexual orientation. I think that you have to process who you are, and it takes time, especially when you live in a heteronormative society, which deters you from being your authentic self. But I'll proceed with what she says, and sometimes I'm going to stop and start to give my lesbian reaction. I am Giselle Wallace, certified gay life coach and author. I provide my lesbian perspective. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and join my channel membership, the Premium which Tribe actually provides content and resources that are for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and LGBTQ plus people to help us navigate our lives in a heteronormative society. So I look forward to you joining the channel membership. Just hit the join button and I'll see you on the other side.
I just want to ask your piece. Well, actually, I want to talk about right now what's going on. Speaking of like online, what's happening online. I'm sure you're seeing everything with Fletcher and JoJo Siwa and everything, and seeing all of just the biphobia, the bi erasure happening. And I just want to get your thoughts.
I have so much space and love for those women who are probably going through it right now. I think it's hard when you become representative of something to other people and then you change, or you are just following your heart, and that means that other people feel like they are not represented anymore.
Right.
Like the pressure of that is so immense. And what I want for my pop stars and the people that I look up to is ultimately for them to be happy, right? It's like I want you to feed me, but I also want to know that you're okay. That's like why I stan Britney Spears so much now, and like people are like, yeah, but she's not okay. I'm like, what do you mean? She's twirling in her living room. I think actually she's maybe happier than she's ever been. Like she has the login to her Instagram. I don't care if you think she's not well, like she's free.
Right.
And I kind of, my hot take is that is like better for her than whatever, like people thought she was so healthy because she came back and like did the circus tour, but she was like never more unhappy than that, and we don't know that. So I like look at JoJo and I go, you do look so happy, and it like makes me bummed that then that's like gives people the sort of like other side of it. It gives like people who are homophobic like a win.
Right.
I don't love that that is how it comes across, or that people are like, finally you're turning back to God. You know, it's
Right.
like, whoa. I just want people to be happy. I don't think that it means that they aren't tried and true queer people.
Right.
I'm going to pause right there. So it appears that the interviewer is asking Betty Who about her thoughts about an artist, JoJo. I'm familiar with JoJo. She's a singer, a very nice singing voice. And then she mentions Britney Spears. But from my understanding, I don't know if Britney Spears is bisexual or not. I don't know. But apparently JoJo is. And I understand that the heterosexual community is happy that JoJo is with a man, because apparently she revealed that she was bisexual, or maybe she was a lesbian. I don't know the backstory with JoJo's situation, but if you know, you can share. But it sounds as if JoJo either once previously said she was a lesbian or she was bisexual, but now she's with a man in a relationship, and the heterosexual community is applauding it, and they feel like they've won, because a lot of times heterosexual people usually express their displeasure when they learn that a woman is only with a woman. And she could be a lesbian or she could be bisexual. If she's in a relationship with a woman, it just makes their day just go completely bad. But since JoJo is an artist, you know, she's famous, she's known, since she's in this relationship with a man, a lot of heterosexual people view it like, oh, she's come to her senses, she's back on our team, and they're celebrating. And so Betty Who is basically saying that that's the homophobic way of people showing that they really want women to be heterosexual, and she doesn't approve of it. But I noticed the host initially was saying, what is your thoughts about biphobia and bi erasure? So honestly, this is about biphobia and bi erasure. And so Betty Who is giving her thoughts. And this is going to be interesting. I'm going to share with you real soon if I think that they are referring to women being able to change their sexual orientation. Meaning, do I believe that Betty Who is saying that if a woman is a lesbian, she can change her sexual orientation to being bisexual? And I'll proceed.
I also feel, I just think that JoJo is, I have a lot of love and space for JoJo, and I ride for her, because I think if you sat and had a conversation with her, you'd be like, I fucking love this girl.
Right.
She is like, she's smart, she is generous, kind, you know, like self-aware as much as we think that she's not, like she fully is.
Right.
And I think that, you know, when she was like, I felt pressured, it's like, everything that she says gets taken so out of context and then turned around 17 times.
Yeah.
And so I really want, you know, she's, how old is she?
Yeah.
What, fucking 21?
Yeah.
Like, leave her alone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's okay for her to go, I was queer and I wanted to be queer, but that I felt like at the time, because I'm 21 years old, that I have to say I'm a capital L lesbian.
Right.
And you fell in love with somebody. I know, like I'm a queer person who was like, I'm probably going to grow up to be gay. And then I became obsessed with a boy.
Right.
And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It doesn't mean that I am not queer and that I don't represent or like love the queer community and exist in the queer community.
Yeah.
And so I urge, you know, I think a huge theme of this entire conversation for both of us has been to allow ourselves to make the choices that feel right in the moment that they feel right, because a huge part of queerness is like identifying yourself and putting yourself under, like, you know, alphabet mafia. It's like, which one are you? And if you change that, I will never forget it, you know?
Right.
So I think that as much as, you know, like, it's funny that Renee Rapp is like, you'll never catch me dating a man. It's like, go off, queen. Like, I love that for you.
Right.
But I also hold space for her in 10 years if she goes, oops, I met the love of my life and it's this man. I didn't mean to. It's
Right.
like, that's okay. You know, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be like, it shouldn't be illegal for you to fall in love. It's kind of like, now we've come so far that our community is so strong that now it's like a crime to be straight.
Right.
Honestly, cheek. You know, it's like, I do love that we've come full circle. Punishing people for being hetero feels like sort of correct. No, just kidding. Yeah, I really, my ultimate hot take is that I ride for JoJo, and I want her to find herself and peace. You know, and it's just like, we all have so many opinions, and she's such a fun character to like talk about.
So Betty, who said quite a bit, I'm going to give you my lesbian reaction and my lesbian perspective. She is talking about JoJo, and she mentioned somebody else named Renee Rapp. I'm sorry, I don't know who she is. I don't really keep up with all of the new artists. I'm kind of old school, but I've heard of JoJo, and I've heard her voice. She has a very good voice. Sorry if I say Renee Rapp's name wrong. Allegedly, Renee Rapp is lesbian. Betty, who said Renee Rapp made the statement, I am never going to be with a man. Either the woman is lesbian or she's asexual, but I'm pretty sure she's lesbian, because Betty, whose next statement is she has left space for her, because 10 years from now, she could meet a man and fall in love with a man. I 100% disagree with Betty Who regarding Renee Rapp. I think that it's a contradiction, because the host, and I don't know the host's name of Made It Out Media, but she asked Betty Who about her thoughts of the artists in the industry, because Betty Who is an artist in the music industry. She asked her what are her thoughts about biphobia and bi erasure. That is very specific. Biphobia and bi erasure refers to bisexual people, and more specifically bisexual women, because Betty Who is referring to women. And apparently JoJo is bisexual, but now she is in a relationship with a man, and she said something about JoJo saying she felt pressured, and I don't know all the backstory of that, but I'm going based off the context of what I'm hearing from Betty Who in this interview. She is saying that you can change. And when she says you can change, I think she needs to elaborate more on that and give more detail, because it sounds to me like Betty Who believes that you can change your sexual orientation. And if that is what she is saying allegedly, and I stress allegedly because I don't know what she meant about change, you can change. I disagree, because I do not think that you can change your sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is ingrained. Sexual orientation is not taught. Nobody can teach you to be attracted to someone sexually or romantically. You just are. The only thing that you can be taught is how to maybe act or perform like someone who you are not. And because we live in a bigoted, homophobic, and biphobic society, heterosexuality is considered the default sexual orientation, and it's also in some cases considered the only sexual orientation to exist. So if you live in a society like that, well, it makes sense for JoJo to say she felt pressured. Sounds like she felt pressured to label herself. So again, I don't know the backstory of JoJo's situation, but it sounds like she was pressured to call herself lesbian. And then it sounds like she said she was bisexual. And then she's in a relationship currently, and she's with a man. And the heterosexual community is celebrating because JoJo is not a lesbian. JoJo is not bisexual anymore because she's in a relationship with a man. So does that mean someone can change their sexual orientation? No. JoJo says she felt pressured. If she feels pressured, it sounds like she was pressured to choose a sexual orientation. But you cannot choose your sexual orientation. You can lie about your sexual orientation, or you can feel pressured to label yourself a certain sexual orientation, but that is not really your true identity. She is an artist. She is before the public. So there is the pressure for you to present yourself to be a certain way in order for you to maintain your fan base. And you also have to consider these people are musical artists. They earn a living by being musical artists. So there's pressure for you to conform to a heteronormative standard. And if she allegedly says she was lesbian at one point, or if she says she was bisexual at one point, but now she's in this relationship with a man, well, because we live in a closed-minded world, people think that anytime a woman is with a man, that automatically means that she is heterosexual. And if she was with a woman in the past, she was confused or she was going through a phase. So yes, that would be considered bi erasure, or yes, it could be considered lesbian erasure. But based off of what Betty Who is saying in the context of this interview, I don't think JoJo is a lesbian. And the reason why I say that is because she is with a man. Lesbians do not fall in love with men, because Betty Who keeps on saying you can fall in love with a man. And then this leads me back to talking about the person, Renee Rapp. And I apologize ahead of time if I say Renee Rapp's name wrong, because I think at one point I said Betty Rapp, but that was my bad. I really meant Renee. She made a statement allegedly of, I will never be with a man or date a man. So that implies she's a lesbian. Let's just say allegedly this person is a lesbian. Betty Who makes the statement, I have still left space open that maybe 10 years from now, she will meet the love of her life and it will be a man because it happened to me. Well, I disagree, because Betty Who, for one, because I did play through the interview, I saw and I read through Betty Who's experience. Betty Who said that she was ashamed to call herself a lesbian because the environment that she was in was very homophobic. And she said that she learned that she was attracted to women or females, but when she met a guy or a male who was attractive or equally attractive as she thought a woman was, then she said, I'm bisexual. So she labeled herself bisexual, but she never has labeled herself a lesbian. And Betty Who is married to a man. Betty Who says she's 33 years old at the time of this interview, and she met her husband when she was 22 or 23 years old. So she says they've been together for 11 years. She said that she loves being married to this man that she's married to, and she doesn't want to change that for herself. Now, Betty Who is putting herself in the same position as the other artists. I'm just going to say rap, because I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with her and I don't know her full name. But she's saying, Betty Who's saying, oh, it happened to me. I fell in love with the man. So surely it can happen to a lesbian as well. Well, that's not true, because see, Betty Who is not a lesbian. Betty Who is bisexual. So of course she can fall in love with the man. Lesbians do not fall in love with men. They don't, because that's why they're lesbians. So it's a contradiction for you to talk about biphobia and bi erasure, but then you say that lesbians can change and lesbians can fall in love with a man. That is lesbian erasure. And women who think like Betty Who are a part of the problem, because lesbian erasure doesn't just come from heterosexual people. It comes from bisexual people as well. And Betty Who is an example of this. So Betty Who cannot put herself in the same position as a lesbian, because a lesbian and a bisexual woman are two different people, and they're two different sexual orientations. And she's thinking like a bisexual person because she is bisexual. So she can only think of like a bisexual person. But she's also still, I believe, these are my thoughts, I think that she still has homophobia, because her history, she was afraid to admit that she was attracted to women. She said that in the interview. She said that she never wanted to call herself a lesbian. Why did she not want to call herself a lesbian? Well, for one, because she learned that she was attracted to both sexes, male and female. And then number two, she was surrounded by a very toxic homophobic environment. Her school settings were very homophobic. So she feared being outcasted. She feared being mistreated if she said that she was attracted to females. So Betty Who is not able to know how a lesbian thinks, because she's not a lesbian. She's thinking like a bisexual person. And I disagree that a woman can change her sexual orientation. I do not think women can change their sexual orientation. Just like I don't think anybody can change their sexual orientation. Your sexual orientation is who you are. And you find out who you are when you are able to get into a space, and that is a mental space, an emotional space, a spiritual space, where you become aligned and you no longer are affected by other people's opinion about who you are or who you should be. I think Betty Who has homophobia. And I think Betty Who is a bisexual woman. And I think that she thinks that all women are capable of liking and falling in love with men. And that is absolutely false. I'm a lesbian. I've always been a lesbian. And I have a quote that is saying, once a lesbian, always a lesbian. Just like a bisexual woman doesn't want people to put her in the box of saying, you are heterosexual. She shouldn't put lesbians in a box of saying, well, you can change and you can be bisexual and fall in love with the man. I think that also comes from Betty Who being male-centered. She met a man she fell in love with. I think it was more acceptable for her to be with a man than it was for a woman. And so her dating a man in her early 20s, and she mentioned she dated other guys too. So she dated guys because she has homophobia. And so, of course, it's not surprising that you would fall in love with a man or marry a man because you're bisexual, but also it's easier for you because you will fit into society, a heteronormative society. And I think a lot of these women who think like Betty Who, they're homophobic and they are not really dealing with their homophobia. And in many ways, I believe that they have a bit of jealousy for lesbian women because lesbian women can stand in their truth and they can say, I am a gay woman, I am a female homosexual, I am a lesbian. And they say it with confidence. Whereas a lot of bisexual women, they are more afraid of expressing their homosexual side. Not that they're homosexual, because they're not. They're bisexual. But what I mean is they will not date or marry women because they want to be accepted. And so they end up dating and marrying men. And this is not an opinion. This is a fact. There is a statistic, but it was a study. It was a long-term study where it was discovered that 93% of bisexual people date and marry the opposite sex. 93%. That is extremely high. So it makes sense that Betty Who would think the way she is thinking, but I disagree with her. I do not think that you can change your sexual orientation, and I absolutely do not think that lesbians can one day fall in love with a man. That would mean that she is bisexual or fluid in her sexuality. It is lesbian erasure for Betty Who to make statements such as she did. That's all I have for now. There's some other commentary she says later on. Like I say, it's about 8 minutes of a segment. You can start at like the 40-minute mark and go to the 48-minute mark if you just want to go and listen to everything about this whole thought process of Betty Who believing that lesbians can change their sexual orientation and one day fall in love with a man. If you want to listen to that, go right ahead. I've already given you my lesbian thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also become a member of my channel membership, which is called the Premium Tribe.